Hello and welcome to the Ask Assaad show. I'm Michael Gaines, host of the podcast NOV Today, and glad you are with us today as we bring insight out and have conversations on business strategy and other topics regarding the energy industry. So we are looking forward to having a good conversation today and think that you will definitely enjoy that. So before we jump in and get to our host, Assaad, we are going to bring in Shelby Dumaine, and she is our digital communication specialist and is going to talk to us a little bit about today's show. I know it's a little bit newer format for some, so just kind of want to run through that with our viewers. So, hey, Shelby.
Hey, Michael. So yeah, like you said, the Ask Assaad show here, we do it a little bit differently than our other show, NOV Live. And the main difference is that for questions and comments, we gather them the week prior to the show. So we have something called our Mailbag, and that is we look at all comments we get. We also have an email and a phone, which I'll talk about more in a little bit. And we compile all those questions and we give them to Assaad so that he can really make sure he has a researched and a great answer to give you guys on air. And so what we ask of you is that if you're watching the show and you'd like to not just submit a question, but maybe you just want to submit, your own thoughts or opinions on what we're talking about today. We'd love to hear all feedback, all questions. You can post them in the comments section, and we'll make sure to kind of gather those and put those in the mailbag. And then you can also, like I mentioned, you can email us. That email is askassad@nov.com. So it's on the screen now. So you can email askassad@nov.com. Or you can also call us. And again, this is for questions or comments in general. So that phone number is, we'll put on the screen now. It's country code +1 346 223 4799. So we'll be kind of reading the comments as they come in today as well, just keeping an eye on them if we do want to see what y'all are talking about and maybe mention on the show. But for the most part, definitely put in your questions and comments, and we'll make sure to put them in that mailbag for next week.
All right, thanks, Shelby. Yeah, looking forward to getting some of those comments. Yeah, definitely. So I think today's conversation will certainly spark some good conversation. And to help kick us off, we've got Assaad Mohanna, who is the Director of Business Strategy here at NOV. So, hey, Assaad, thanks for being here today. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Michael. Thanks for having me.
So as always, we like to kind of jump in and do a weekend review to kind of look at major items that are happening. I know that in today's conversation, we really are going to be talking about some good topics that relate to the industry overall. But just kind of wanted to start out and get some of the perspective and analysis that you've been able to have over the last week. So what's been top of mind and kind of top of the docket for you as we look back?
Yeah. So the last week we've been digging a little bit into the day rate model that the oil industry has been used to for so many decades. It's come to many people's attention just because it has been brought up quite often, and rarely have we kind of moved away from it. So this morning, in fact, we had a panel discussion with the IEDC, with other fellow panel speakers from Noble Drilling, from BP, from Parker Drilling. And we were discussing where would this downturn take us, and what does collaboration after pandemic look like?
Right. Yeah, because I know that when we're talking about the topic of a day rate, there are some that are very familiar with kind of the earlier days of utilizing this model. There are some that might be new to the industry. So for those that may not be familiar as much, could you maybe just help kind of set the stage, give a kind of 50,000-foot overview of what we're kind of talking about for those that might not be as in tune?
Sure. Yeah. Just the value chain in upstream oil and gas is designed in such a way that the operator who owns the land and the rights to the hydrocarbons contracts a rig owner or a drilling contractor who mobilizes their expensive asset. And on land, these are, 15, 20, $30 million rigs, depending where you go around the world. Or if you go offshore, you start looking at jackups or semi-submersibles or even drill ships that could cost all the way up to, several hundreds of millions of dollars. And the way they're contracted to the operator is by the day. And usually a day rate could range anywhere from a few tens of thousands of dollars a day to multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars a day if you go offshore into the deep water space. And just by its nature, the day rate incentivizes the drilling contractor to improve in one direction. But when the operator's seeking other things, like we're going to see in some of the slides I'm going to be sharing, the goal and the incentive become misaligned, which is where you end up in trouble.
Right. Yeah. And that's something that, even for myself, when I first joined the industry, just looking at the concept from someone who didn't have any background, I could see where maybe the genesis of it, of where, if you didn't have the advancements in directional drilling, or you didn't have a lot of the kind of robust supply chain or mobility access that you have now, I could understand and see a scenario where, yeah, it's going to take, without directional drilling or motors or tubulars or things it's going to take quite a while to get to the end result of voltage hitting the pay zone, versus today where we can really churn and burn. So that's an interesting observation. So maybe we can dive in a little bit more to talk about what does that look like? What are some of the dynamics and some of the maybe considerations with the current business model as it relates to kind of the day rate model, and just like we mentioned a moment ago as we talked today, if those that are viewing have thoughts or questions or comments, whether you agree or disagree with what we talk about today, we'd love to hear your comments. Let us know if you feel like we're way off, or if you fully agree, because ultimately getting your feedback helps drive additional conversations that we're able to have here. So as we talk today, if there's something that resonates with you, drop us a line. Again, you can certainly send an email to askassad@nov.com, or we would love to just hear your thoughts straight from you. So give us a call. The numbers are on the screen: +1 346 223 4799. And share your thoughts, share your comments with us. We'd love to hear it. So Assaad, let's talk about some of the items that you have in terms of helping those folks watching understand the day rate model and considerations.
Okay, let's pull up that slide. I'm excited about this because it's I only had a few minutes to share this morning in the panel. Now I get a little bit more time to dig a bit deeper into it. Sure. So the day rate model works, right? It works great, in fact, and the proof is we've been using it for decades. You won't find anybody out there that'll say, disagree on how many days it took you to drill a well, say, or how you measured each individual day, or whether your measurement was accurate or not, which is the case when you move away from the day rate model into things like performance model. And, you finished in this much, drilling, we use that much ROP, or that sort of placement within the reservoir, which are more or less of a science, or less accurate in today's technology. But we cannot deny that that's a problem that needs to be changed. We've been using day rate for as long as we can remember. Some operators, some contractors have tried to kind of steer away from the day rate model a little bit. It hasn't worked. It's worked in places not national operating companies or NOCs use things like lump sum turnkey projects. Imagine you get somebody to fix your house, and would you, to get something fixed, would you pay them in by the day or by the hour, or instead by the job? So some people have tried to do the by the job, but it hasn't always worked either. The character you're seeing on the screen is a fellow I've used in some of my work. He's made a few appearances because he embodies a big part of the issue. Obviously, he's a made-up character, but he's an experienced driller who's really good at what he does, and he's always kept his company's and his clients' best interests at heart. But he had an issue. He had a challenge. He couldn't get away from convention. He couldn't get away from conventional practices. He was convinced that some things could not change. Stuck pipe could just happen. We cannot ignore it. Time-based maintenance is something that has to be done. I mean, you can't unless you increment on spending, you can't increment on uptime. So things like data analytics and automation and process control were hard to kind of adopt and adapt with. So he's the type of guy who'd get overwhelmed with all of this new stuff around him, let alone a change in day rate, which would shake up a little bit of the way he's done things. And then not talking about Fred, but also going into, okay, let's survey the market. NOV's worked with IDC for many years now to send out the yearly questionnaire, with each year having a theme. And a common subject in these questionnaires have been the alignment between operators and drilling contractors, and how each drove their execution models in the field. And the misalignment was clear, right? When you look at the contractor from one end and the drilling and the operator from the other, there's clear misalignment in how each one of them is heading. The operator's goals focus on a predictable cost per barrel, a better placement within the reservoir, repetitiveness, but by using the day rate model, they're really telling the drilling contractor, hey, you got to maintain your equipment. I can't afford downtime or not productive time. And stay ready, keep your crews trained and ready for when the upturn comes. Well, that's a problem, because there's that gap that keeps growing, which reduces the potential for that performance improvement and incentive for the drilling contractor to change. But what we've seen with the tight crunch in oil field economics, especially in the last 6 years, more specifically in the last 6 months, and also more recently with COVID-19, we're seeing more urgency for adoption. And that's important, because now it stops being an option. It becomes a non-negotiable term, right? So Fred, who we just talked about, the name of the guy we just presented earlier, could now better align with the operator's goals. Right now, it's a matter of survival, fighting for business. I have to adopt. So things like POB reduction or personnel on board reduction for offshore rigs, remote operation become extremely important. Automation, now I have to take on automation, because that's the only way to get further. They're becoming less of a luxury, more of a necessity. Other things like sensor and data accuracy, a huge topic. Condition-based monitoring, the ability to provide integrated services. That's all now showing value, not just only for differentiation, which was the premise for adoption earlier, but today more as the way for leap in performance improvement. But the problem there, Michael, is that it took a generational downturn to get to where we are. It took a once in a lifetime disaster for that sort of adoption to happen. Are we able to accelerate that and really take advantage of closing the gap between goals and incentives. As mentioned earlier, NOCs use the lump sum turnkey type model. That's one of them. Performance-based contracts exist as well. Some kind of hybrid model combines two or more, whatever works. The idea is, how can we create a shared incentives model by securing mutual commitment by not just both parties. Now, when you talk about this, it's the operator, it's a drilling contractor, and it's a service company. So mutual commitments for all three parties to reduce waste and keep delivering value. I think, and to close, it's just a short presentation. When we consider what's changed in the last 40 years, I think as an industry, major progress has been done. We could give ourselves a pat on the back for that. We've used technology. We managed to move the driller first into a comfortable chair, which seemed like to be a milestone, but also moved into to becoming the executor of, or becoming the supervisor of a wide range of tasks he would previously had done himself manually. But the question is that enough? And clearly the answer is no, especially with today's environment. And the next step becomes, how can we take people off the work site entirely? Why can't we take the driller into an office where they can control the rig, they can see everything? Why can't she be in full control of the equipment, of what's going on the rig, whether on land or offshore, without having to be there? The next step is to move away from the conventional way of thinking, the day rate models that have kind of bogged us into that one place. The data secrecy, which is a major barrier for that kind of progress. The squeeze down of service costs, just every downturn, drive costs down, drive service companies down, which results in all the bankruptcies that we've been talking about. And create that environment of collaboration where all stakeholders are empowered to work together to improve the health of the industry, and really get us to a place where it's a lot safer, it's more predictable, and performance is significantly better.
That's really interesting, and I'd be I know that you've certainly done a lot of research and diving into the details of understanding and researching the concept of a day rate methodology and what that looks like. And so for those that are watching, would certainly like to get your thoughts and perspective and ideas for that matter. I mean, do you agree or disagree with some of the ideas that we were able to talk to today? Would love to hear your feedback. Happy for you to stay anonymous if you like, but certainly want to get your thoughts and perspectives. Feel free to give us a call, 346+1-346-223-4799, and let us know what you think. Do you agree that the day rate model needs to be transformed into something else, or do you feel that it is the way to go forward? We'd certainly like to have your perspectives, but either way, appreciate that insight, Assaad. Definitely a topic that I think for some is quite an energizing topic to discuss for sure.
Yeah.
So I guess at this point we'll probably look to get some questions answered, I think from our mailbag. So we'll bring Shelby in to present some of those. So hey, Shelby.
Hey guys. So I'm here with some mailbag questions, and this first one comes from Shankar on LinkedIn, and he noted there are really good, really excellent ways to push technology, but regulators and compliance still remain a few years behind. So how do you think we sync those together?
Yeah, I think it's related to what we just discussed. It's the adoption. I think we're truly experiencing a transition in upstream oil and gas. first we were in some sort of a denial phase. Now we're accepting that issues do exist, and there are ways to fix them. Whether how to accelerate adoption of technology, or how do we fix our environmental impact from things like shale, or not have another Mocondo. I think those are red alerts for us to take action, and they have been for a while. But just the fact that we've had specifically today the pandemic, as well as the crunch, makes some of these things that used to be luxury become no longer negotiable. So when it comes to bringing in adoption, whether it's the operator, it's changing legislation, or the authorities around a space and to regulate that particular technology. I think the technology aspect is one, but the vision and the leadership and the people is another, and that's a significant contributor to whether it actually takes place or not.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe to complement that, I think the big change today is quality of data. Mm-hmm. Quality of data means, or good quality means trust. If I don't trust your data as a service provider or as a drilling contractor, I'm probably not gonna change much or hand in all I've got, especially if it's got something to do with my fate or my balance sheet. So I think what I like to say about data quality is, in today's environment, with everybody pushing for the transition, pushing for how can we collaborate better, the day rate doesn't work. I would say without data quality, we cannot make that transition. And I would even go as far as say, you're as good as your data quality is. And that's not just to your customer, but also to yourself. If you can't use your own data and trust it, then there's a major concern. We ran a poll amongst the audience this morning during the panel on whether or not people in the audience trusted their own data. And over half, but I think about 60%, said no. And that's a big concern, let alone trusting other people's data. You know your systems, you know your equipment, and you still don't trust your data. Then there's a long way for change.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So this next question from our mailbag comes from Reema Gayatri, and she's from the On the Dais show. She always posts really great insights and questions. And so there's a couple questions here wrapped into one. So she was wondering, looking at the current industry dynamics, what questions do you feel oil and gas organizations must ask? What should they really be focusing on? And what are some of the business models that you see emerging?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about the business models, and the alternatives could be, a mix. It could be a mix of day rate plus something else. But as long as that other model incentivizes, the idea is how do we incentivize to align? I think that's the first question. Day rate does not incentivize a drilling contractor to drill faster, because guess what? If I drill faster, I get paid less. So that's number one. Number two, how do we democratize data? How do we make data available? Right now, we're all talking about data ownership and who owns it, and how do I treat data, and how do I keep that secrecy? I think that's the wrong discussion. It's okay. There's some data that has to remain, aside. That's not especially subsurface data. But there has to be something out there that everybody could use, or the same group of partners can use together to improve together. So which data? Let's sit down, bring all the stakeholders, and talk about which data can we democratize and which do we not. And then what do we do to stop competing on data, but instead compete on performance, right? So bringing us back to data quality. If today a differentiator for a particular drilling contractor would be good quality data, and that's the competitive edge. I think that should be the standard. Everybody should have access to good quality data, and there are initiatives out there, and there's technology that's being developed, and when we're doing some of that work. But once data quality is the standard, and we build that trust, then there could be an avalanche of improvement. And then the last question I would have is, how can we collaborate to make our industry more resilient? There's something in operations management called the bullwhip effect. And what it is, it's when there's a shakeup in the market, but those closest to the end of the beginning of the value chain, so the operator who's producing the barrel, get affected the least because they're in that value chain, have the most visibility on that shakeup. The furthest in that value chain, if you go, towards the, first the contractors, the service companies, the manufacturers. There's a accumulating sinusoidal wave that grows because of that noise. The first guy wants to build up a little bit of cushion, or has been building up a little bit of cushion to stay afloat. The guy behind him also has his own cushion on top of the other guy's cushion. So when the downturn hits, the last guy is the first to be hit the most, and then you go on from there. The way away from that is communication. If the first guy told the last guy, hey, here's what I'm seeing, and here's how much true demand there is, or there's going to be, then we don't get into a situation where we have over 100,000 people let go in Houston from upstream oil and gas in just a matter of a few weeks. And we prevent that bullwhip effect by open communication channels, by true collaboration. And I think, as always, Michael, there's a silver lining here.
You read my mind. I was going to ask. I know the silver lining's got to be somewhere.
It is here. It's big. We have to go through a lot of pain to get there, but the silver lining is collaboration. It's open platforms. It's different models. It's really sitting on one table and having these conversations.
Yeah, I think maybe some future conversations we might be able to have here, maybe even on the show, might be exploring, some of the pros and cons of those different models, right? That I know they're out there. So you have things such as like a turnkey, or maybe a model that shares in really some of the risk or the benefits, right? Because ultimately what we're talking about is, and I think I saw one of the comments that came through is really we're talking about who kind of manages or has the either larger or lesser share of risk, right? It's right with risk management, and then how does that happen? So that might be something we can dive into. I mean, it's one part of it for sure, but you hit on a lot of the key topics. The overarching really being, at the end of the day, regardless of whatever the future business models are, we have to be okay with the fact that, as you mentioned, what got us here won't necessarily get us there, right? So it won't necessarily be what carries us into the future. So that'll be some interesting.
And to the point on risk, I think it's a valid point. There's liability involved, but I mean, I'll just say that it's been done. You look at what Aker BP, Maersk Drilling, and Halliburton did in Europe. Was just that, was a combination of different day rates. Everybody was incentivized to in the upside, and everybody was incentivized negatively in the downside. So it can be done. working in silos and procurement being separate from contracts, from operations, from design, won't work anymore. It has to be an open conversation internally and externally. But I think we'll see it. I think it's there, and as things progress, it's going to accelerate.
Right. All right. Well, appreciate as always the perspectives, Assaad. Definitely looking forward to diving in deeper on some of these topics and more as we move ahead. And definitely also want to encourage those that are watching, that are in the comments. If you have a comment, whether your view is the same or different, this is certainly an open conversation. So want to get your views and opinions. Feel free to again drop us a line. For me, if you're anything like me, you're an email all day long. So sometimes it's easier just to make a quick call. And if that's you, then we definitely encourage you to drop us a line, +1 346 223 4799, and let us know what you thought about today's conversation. If there are models that you think really could be the tipping point for the industry in order for it to move ahead, moving from a conventional model to something newer, possibly that more beneficial across the board. We'd love to hear your thoughts and would be happy to feature that on a future episode. Yeah. So with that, I think, again, we've put the email up, but certainly want to make sure that you have that. Again, that's asksad at NOV.com. So Assaad, appreciate the perspective and the questions today.
Appreciate it, Michael. Thank you.
And we want to thank for being a part of the Ask Assaad show. Appreciate you listening and watching. And from all of us here at NOV, thanks. And we will talk to you again next time.